Ukraine's refinery strikes push Russia toward fuel chaos and mobilization crisis. In the last 24 hours, a new fault line has opened inside the Russian Federation, one not created by battlefield losses, but by fuel shortages, collapsing logistics, and the growing possibility of mass unrest. As refineries burn and infrastructure is hit deep behind the front, Russian volunteers fighting for Ukraine now warn that the Kremlin may soon face a choice it can no longer avoid: launch a new wave of mobilization and risk crippling its own economy, or hold back and watch its military pressure collapse along the entire front. Behind these calculations lies a far more volatile question. What happens to a country when its oil industry, its workforce, and its political narrative all begin to crack at the same time? Today, at 5:10 a.m., assessments from Ukrainian and Russian volunteer analysts converged on a single conclusion. The strikes on Russian oil refineries and energy infrastructure are no longer isolated incidents. They are becoming a sustained pressure mechanism aimed at weakening the Russian economy, disrupting fuel logistics, and amplifying public discontent inside the Russian Federation. These views were articulated in detail by a Russian volunteer fighter known by the call sign Caesar, whose real name is Maxim Leon-Andronikov, a former fitness coach from Sochi and St. Petersburg, now fighting on Ukraine's side. His perspective offered a clear window into the operational logic behind Ukraine's long-range targeting campaign and the political vulnerabilities emerging inside Russia. By 6 a.m., Caesar emphasized that Ukraine's continued strikes on refineries are functioning as the most effective sanctions currently applied to the Russian state. Because these strikes directly disrupt the systems that sustain the Russian economy, fuel processing, distribution networks, and military logistics, they have become a strategic lever capable of triggering what he described as gasoline riots, a term referring to the potential for internal unrest driven by shortages and rising costs. From Caesar's perspective, these refinery strikes are not only military actions, but economic warfare, gradually eroding the internal stability of Russia. He assessed that if Ukraine continues applying pressure with long-range drones and missiles, Russia's internal order could falter as fuel shortages disrupt movement, supply chains, and daily life. Without fuel, he stated, logistics in the modern world are simply impossible, a point that directly ties a collapse to frontline outcomes. Around 7:15 a.m., Caesar explained that the future tempo of fighting would depend entirely on one factor: whether Vladimir Putin decides to pursue a new wave of mobilization. He contended that attack density, assault frequency, and sector pressure would all flow from that decision. If mobilization begins, even on a limited scale, Ukrainian forces will feel the consequences directly in the form of increased manpower thrown into assaults designed to stretch Ukrainian defenses. However, custodial recruitment pools are largely depleted. This means the Kremlin can no longer draw fighters from criminal populations without harming internal security. Any new wave would pull workers from essential sectors already strained by sanctions and wartime spending. Caesar underlined that this will destabilize Russia from within, because the people mobilized will come from essential sectors already under strain due to Western sanctions and wartime spending. By 11 a.m., under growing manpower pressure, Russian forces push on many sectors and reinforce only where they see success. This method relies on overwhelming weight rather than coordination, with Russian assault units probing multiple sectors simultaneously and attempting to exploit any local breakthrough. Ukraine, he argued, must counter this by strengthening its own strike capabilities and maintaining a campaign of pressure against Russia's fuel and military industries. Caesar continued by stating that Ukraine's long-range weapons, naval drones, strike UAVs, and deep strike missiles have become the country's most impactful sanctions package. These systems, when directed against oil refineries, military production plants, and logistical hubs, generate economic losses and operational disruption far greater than any diplomatic measure. According to him, if this pace of strikes continues, Russia may soon reach a breaking point where fuel shortages cause systemic paralysis. By 1:40 p.m., Caesar addressed Putin's current political strategy. He argued that the Kremlin's leadership is attempting to demoralize Ukrainian society through repeated missile and drone attacks on civilian areas, particularly during summer and autumn. These attacks, he said, reflect a state of hysteria in Russia's political elite, driven by the military's inability to achieve battlefield success within the constraints of the Geneva Conventions. Resorting to attacks on civilian areas, in his view, demonstrates an effort to compensate for failures on the front line with psychological pressure. According to Caesar, Putin's internal strength will continue eroding as more military-industrial facilities are destroyed and a greater share of the oil industry burns. He estimated that once about 70% of Russia's refining and fuel production capacity is disrupted, Putin will no longer be able to justify the slow progress of military operations in the Donbass. Instead, he will be forced to shift to narratives of hardship and sacrifice, framing economic collapse as an unavoidable reality. By 4:10 p.m., Caesar also addressed the financing of Russian mercenary formation. He stated that payments to many irregular units are already being reduced, reflecting budget strain from the prolonged war. As revenues shrink and expenses climb, the Russian government's ability to pay contract fighters will diminish. This financial downturn, he argued, will create new tensions between the Kremlin and the paramilitary groups it relies on for frontline manpower. Around 5:20 p.m., attention shifted to the timing of a potential new mobilization. Caesar noted that while Russian state media claims that mobilization will be smooth and non-disruptive, this narrative does not align with reality. The manpower reserves available in prisons and other controlled populations are exhausted. Any new wave of recruitment will require removing workers directly from civilian economic roles, weakening sectors already strained by wartime production demands. He predicted that if mobilization begins, Ukrainian forces will face increased pressure, but Russia's internal system, its economy, its workforce, and its social cohesion will deteriorate more rapidly. In his view, the Kremlin has reached a point where every decision carries heavy consequences, both at the front and within Russian borders. While military and political discussions dominated the day, reports also emerged from Brazil regarding a fire at the venue hosting UN climate discussions. Officials stated that the fire spread through several pavilions situated outside the main conference center. Firefighters responded quickly, and the area was evacuated without injury. According to the personnel on the ground, smoke was first observed near the China pavilion, although early accounts suggested the fire may have originated near the Italian section of the exhibition space. The site had been under construction right up until the start of the International Summit, with exposed beams, temporary flooring, and partially completed corridors. As the fire spread, black smoke reduced visibility, and many attendees were unsure of the proper evacuation route. Security staff guided groups through open areas, while firefighters moved in to contain the blaze. Despite the disruption, the fire was declared under control, and no significant structural damage to the main conference building was reported. By 6:45 p.m., the contrast between the two events, the political instability forecast inside Russia and the logistical challenges at a global climate summit, showed how very different crises can still disrupt large international systems. To understand why a single climb can ignite an entire Russian air defense grid, the story has to rewind. These fighters, positioned directly on the Ukrainian front line, have insight into both battlefield dynamics and political sentiments inside the Russian Federation. Their evaluations highlight the way battlefield pressure interacts with economic stress to shape internal political conditions. At 10:15 p.m., the strategic picture became clearer. Ukraine's long-range strikes on refineries aim to impose fuel shortages that degrade military transport, reduce the availability of aviation fuel, and strain domestic consumption inside Russia. Fuel scarcity weakens every part of the Russian war effort, from tank operations to logistics trucks to the supply lines feeding frontline artillery units. Simultaneously, the political cost of mobilization continues rising. If Putin chooses to launch a new wave of recruitment, the Kremlin risks weakening key economic sectors and increasing dissatisfaction among the civilian population. If he avoids mobilization, the Russian military may lack the manpower needed to sustain operations across such a wide front. As Caesar suggested, the Kremlin now faces a narrowing corridor of options. Each path, mobilization, restraint, economic prioritization, or escalation, links directly to internal pressure driven by Ukraine's strikes on critical infrastructure. The central question is whether these combined effects, economic strain, military losses, and internal unrest, will converge. If they do, Russia may confront a systemic challenge more severe than any single battlefield defeat. As night falls over the front, one question remains. Will fuel shortages and internal unrest force a strategic shift inside Russia, or will the Kremlin try to absorb the shock and continue mobilization?